Hey, BookTube. Hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to talk to you today quickly about two novels, just very briefly, and read a passage from one of those novels. And I was thinking about them because today marks the last day of my 30s. And all the looking back and rewinding and replaying that comes along with beginning a new decade in life, I think, for most of us. I can remember being 29 and 30 just seemed so unreal to me that that could actually be my true age, because I still felt like a kid, still feel like a kid, and still act like one most of the time. But the fact that an entire decade has passed since that time is even possibly even more unbelievable. So I was looking at two books which feature protagonists who turn 30. They're 10 years younger than I am, and they're two of my favorite books. And I was thinking about how novels, portray age and what that signifies within the narrative, if anything. I'm reading Love in the Time of Cholera right now, which I had never read, actually. 100 Years of Solitude is one of my all-time favorite novels. It's what got me into literature, actually. And I'd never read Love in the Time of Cholera. So I picked it up, and it is beautiful and sad book. But there's a scene in there where one of the protagonists, one of the characters, turns 40 and talks about the knocking, old age knocking, the first knocks of old age, something along those lines. So I got to thinking about two of my favorite novels that have characters who turn 30 either through the course of the novel or at the beginning. So I'll just briefly tell you those books, and then I'll read a passage from one of them that to me signifies a lot in my life, but I think is also a beautiful passage of contemplation and of how we can all kind of feel when the next birthday comes around. And I mean, 40 by no means is old, at least I hope not. And I always say you're not, don't say you're old until you're dead. So we'll talk about that just quickly. The first book that I mentioned is The Trial by Franz Kafka. I got this wonderful red hardbound copy from an amazing used bookstore in Roanoke, Virginia, called Too Many Books. And in The Trial, it's kind of a famous story by now, but Joseph K., the protagonist, wakes on his 30th birthday to find that he's been arrested for who knows what, right? There's never a reason given. There have been plenty of interpretations as to what that reason is. I don't know if it's necessary to spend a lot of energy in trying to decipher what that is. I think it's more about his journey through this labyrinth of oppression and the different powers within the structure of this town, and all the other existential aspects, not to overuse that word with Kafka, but the different aspects of Joseph K.'s journey that creates the beauty of the novel, not necessarily the mystery of what he did. But it could be that it was inevitable because he turned 30, right? It could have just been the fact that age was his guilt. And, that's just as likely an interpretation as anything else. But it is that idea that once you hit a certain age that signifies adulthood, that all of a sudden you see all the different inner workings of the connectivity of those things that are closing in around you. That all those aspects, the freer aspects of childhood or your young adulthood, now have been closed off, and you're going through this labyrinth of adulthood with seemingly no relief, at least mentally sometimes, and that you could interpret the trial certainly from that sense, considering he wakes up on his birthday to find himself in this situation, and these authority figures who have already decided he has done something wrong, regardless even if the people arresting him know what he has done, and they don't. So that's the trial, and a much more absurdist take on things than the other novel, which is one of my all-time favorites, a lot of people's all-time favorites, I'm sure, is The Great Gatsby. And I won't delve into the plot and the plight of Nick and Gatsby, but I was going to read one paragraph that's meant a lot to me, particularly 10 years ago when I was turning 30, and then it also connecting with my brother, because I remember my brother reading this in high school and being particularly moved by this scene where it's right before, spoiler alert, it's right before Gatsby and Daisy take off away toward West Egg and meet in one way or another with Myrtle. So, but Nick this whole time is just listening to these empty conversations, and these people, he's distanced from them in so many ways. In many ways he's not, but in this particular instance, he's listening to this fight in this hotel and all these things going on around him, and this kind of tornado that he's been pulled into. And then he realizes, he just remembers, he says, that it's his birthday. And he was 30. So I was going to just read this paragraph real quickly. I was 30. Before me stretched the portentous, menacing road of a new decade. 30. The promise of a decade of loneliness. A thinning list of single men to know. A thinning briefcase of enthusiasm. Thinning hair. But there was Jordan beside me who, unlike Daisy, was too wise ever to carry well-forgotten dreams from age to age. As we passed over the dark bridge, her wan face fell lazily against my coat's shoulder, and the formidable stroke of 30 died away with the reassuring pressure of her hand. So we drove on toward death through the cooling twilight. And that's one of my all-time favorite sentences. So we drove on toward death through the cooling twilight. Because even outside the context of that novel, it is its own metaphor for life, and the beauty in the cooling twilight, that you are traveling wonderfully, and it can be a wonderful journey. We all know where we're heading. Not to be too morbid, but it is these little moments, even in that loneliness of realizing that he's turned 30 and there's all this going on around him that he's so detached from. He also, in that moment at least, he does have someone there. There is a connection, even if it's just almost an aesthetic connection. And there are other things to come, including death. But for that moment, driving on through twilight, the cooling twilight toward death, I think it allows you to take in both the realities of life and kind of the soothing beauty of the things in between. So hope everybody has a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.